How can you improve your bone structure at any age? Your appearance, which is directly impacted by your bone structure, is understood by all humans across the board to be the most important aspect of your life. And why do I make such a strong statement? I make it because if you just think about it, it makes complete sense. Think about money, think about power, think about respect. All of these are learnt traits. You learn the importance of money. You learn to give and get respect. When did you learn what constitutes an attractive face? And by extension, what makes a good bone structure? You never did, because since you were a child, your biology programmed you to realize the importance of it. Now, your bone structure is going to be determined by the forces that are being applied upon it. So we can see that in particular, the jawbone, the entire mandibular complex, is going to be what gives off a perception of confidence as well as competence. Now, why is that so? It's going to be so as the mandibular complex is projected and becomes more prominent the more you chew. What this means evolutionarily is that the more you chew, the more nutrients are directly going to be absorbed into your bloodstream and by extension to your brain, which makes you actually more competent and by extension more confident. That is the symbolism of the jaw, but it's deeply subconscious. Humans would not be able to articulate the rationale as to why the jaw is important for this reason. But this is why. So, the direct answer to how you can improve your mandibular complex is going to be by chewing, but that is not enough. Chewing does not ultimately get you to where you want to be. You need to chew in a particular manner and combine it with supplementary activity. Now, the manner you need to be chewing in is going to be stimulating an environment at the jaw that is low in oxygen saturation. Now, what that means is when you chew your food, and in this case, you need to be chewing hard gum, mastic gum. Mastic gum should be placed on either side and chewed in a perfectly linear motion, not side to side, up and down. When you chew up and down, you need to keep this biting force for a moment. This may be just 3 seconds. When you can keep this down for 3 seconds, that is going to force nutrition to be deposited at the muscle insertion, and that forces an increase in blood vessels as well as nutrient deposition at the site. Now you'll notice that below the muscle insertion is the bone, and this bone is a part of the mandibular complex. Therefore, an increase in nutrient deposition directly correlates with the visibility of your jaw. Now that's going to be the soft tissue mechanism. Now, to supplement this, we need to understand what constitutes a bone's remodeling process. The bone remodeling process only occurs when you can sufficiently signal to the bone that it is under load, it's load bearing, and by extension must remodel itself to be able to withhold this load. If you think about your legs, if you just walked around every day with a lot of mass on your shoulder, you're carrying a lot of weight, your legs aren't going to become superhumanly strong. That is not how bones work, because that weight is static weight. Rather, if you began running, if you began running with extra weight on your back, that is no longer static. You're signaling to the bones that there's an oscillation going on. And only through oscillation does mechanotransduction work. What is mechanotransduction? In simple terms, it's the process where mechanical force, such as tapping off your hand, is going to be converted into chemical signaling at the site of impact. That is how any sort of remodeling occurs, even collagen remodeling. Now, with regards to the bones on the face, we need to make the bones of the face more capable of bearing load. And in particular, this is going to be done by performing something called bone curls. This is something that I have taught many of my students in the past who needed it. And this single-handedly has allowed them to see significant improvements with regards to their bone structure and by extension their overall appearance. So I'm going to give you that value that I spent thousands of hours of my life understanding, applying, and then teaching. And that had got me from the position where I was to now being a signed model. And you can see for yourself the conviction of which I speak with, the consistency at which I make this level of value possible for you, and the level of effort I put in making every single video one take, since I don't need to plan these videos out. I don't need to just script it out. This all comes from within, and that is what I'm telling you. When you can apply a load directly on the bone, and it's not going to be something where you hit the bone, hit the weight on the bone, that doesn't work. Rather, when you can stimulate force to be on top of the bone directly and then leverage that weight to be moved by the muscles around the neck, and it has to be a low weight, that is going to be one of the most direct signals of bone remodeling. So how are you going to do this? What is something actionable you can take from that point? You are going to put a weight on your forehead. The weight is going to begin at only around 3 kilograms. So 3 kilograms of weight, 3 kg on the forehead. Now you're going to lie down on the bench and you are going to curl it with your neck. And what that does is allow the bone to experience the strain and by extension signal to all of the different bone complexes, and most importantly the zygomaticomaxillary complex, that it must thicken, which induces cortical bone thickening, and by extension bone remodeling. And bone remodeling in this case is going to enhance your projection. Your mid-face projection will enhance, but you must remain committed and you must do this correctly. You can see how going about this in a correct and proper manner will change your life. There is no doubt about it. When you combine it with proper nutrition, and not just the nutrition that you can find anywhere on the internet, a very specific optimized path that's going to be maximizing the collagen you are naturally eating, since collagen is necessary for forming the bone complex, which is needed for bone remodeling, making sure that you're consuming enough vitamin D3 supplements if you're not getting it from the sun, then vitamin K2, and then calcium. Calcium is useless without D3 and K2. You also need to make sure that you're having enough protein, not just poor sources of protein, not just protein powder, low quality. It must be the highest quality you can source, such as fish. This is what I have learned from my time in the modeling industry, and I share every single aspect of learning that I have to you. On that note, it's in your interest to watch these videos and gather every single resource that I've put out, since these resources will get you to at least 30% of your potential if you apply it properly. 30%. And you can see for yourself how taking this advice and being invited to work with me one-to-one, to maximize your appearance to the genetic limit will change your life. Not just for vanity's sake, not just so you can look in the mirror and see a face that you're going to be proud of. That's one reason, but more than that, it's going to influence every aspect of your life, and this is a fact, a scientifically proven fact. Now, on that note, subscribe, watch the rest of my videos, and you can apply on my website to potentially be invited to work with me one-to-one, or you can message me directly on Instagram and outline your position. Best of luck, and I'll see you next time.